Morning, it's Tom with Heritage Electrical. This video is about networking and internet in rural locations. So we've done a few videos at this property before, we've come back. Now I've already been here and done some internal networking. So we've replaced all the NICEIC mesh network nodes that our customer had with Ubiquiti access points. So first part of the video is about that and the process that we went through to do that, and just to get the network inside the property, you know, rock solid and easy to manage and maintain. The next part of the video, up until recently, the customer doesn't have a broadband connection. The physical hardwired broadband connection in this area is rubbish. I'm getting maybe 2-3 meg maybe. And so a couple of years ago we opted to install an LTE antenna with a Vodafone data only SIM, and that was working fine, getting speeds of maybe between 20 and 40 meg. And then all of a sudden recently that speed has just dropped off. So we've fitted a new LTE antenna, much bigger antenna. It's a MikroTik, looks like a big sky dish or something. So we'll have a quick look at that. And we've tried a couple of different companies. So we've opted for O2 in the end. We've got an O2 contract SIM in there now, and I've used an app. I'll show you the app a little bit later on, which allowed me to see which company had towers in the area. So I went to visit the tower to see if we've got line of sight of the property, which it almost does. Yes, there was a bit of faffing around with that, trying to find a company that had towers in the area, seeing as Vodafone wasn't going to be up to scratch. 3, that wasn't working. What's the other one now? Is it Smarty? Not sure. But anyway, yeah, so we've looked at all these different providers and it turns out that O2 is the best for this area. Finally, this customer's neighbour has Starlink, and so he's just purchased the Starlink kit. So today I'm going to be fitting the new Starlink satellite antenna, whatever you want to call it, onto the side of the house, and so we'll have a look at that. So hopefully by the end of today we'll have the Starlink connection, and I think they say you get speeds of up to 100 meg. We'll have a backup O2 LTE antenna with this O2 SIM in it, just in case the Starlink goes down, which it does apparently occasionally. And we've got a bulletproof Ubiquiti /Unifi networking solution within the property. So let's take a look at all of those little bits now. So the existing network solution in this property at the moment is this NICEIC stuff. Some of it's hardwired, some of it, like this one, isn't hardwired. This tech forms a mesh network and then passes out you know, a network based on the signal that's received. So there's one unit over there that's hardwired back to the main switch in the plant room cupboard. So that will be booting out Wi-Fi over there. This then picks up the signal from there and then throws that signal out. I think there might be another one in that corner over there that does the same thing. So it forms a mesh network, but because some of it's hardwired and some of it's not, the strength of signal over here is not going to be as strong as if everything was hardwired. Oh, just look at how shiny that is. I mean, it's probably a plastic cover, but oh. Come here, you. There we go. weighty. We've used the light version of these before, but these are a long range version. So we're going to be replacing the NICEIC stuff for a selection of this Ubiquiti access point stuff. So we've got these long range domes, which can be wall mounted or ceiling mounted. So we're going to add a couple of these where there weren't any access points previously, just to improve the, the coverage of the network. We've got a couple of these, which this is the first time I've used these. These are very neat devices. These mount on a back box and just sit there very discreetly on the wall. So we've got a spare pair of data points there that aren't being used, so I'm going to whiz that off and I'm going to replace it with one of these. So you see it's just a RJ45 plug in the back of that. These are all power over Ethernet, so we'll have a look at the switch and the router in a moment, but they are powered from the switch directly, and obviously there's data transfer down the same cable. Just one thing to be aware of, we are not using injectors in this case because we've put in a PoE switch, power over Ethernet. Obviously there's a certain amount of power consumption for each of these units. This one is 30 watts, give or take. This one is 16 and a bit, call it 17. So we just need to do some maths. So we've got two of these, 30, 60. We've got four of these. Let's call it, for argument's sake, 20. Easier maths for me to do. So 20, 40, 60, 80, and 60, that's 140 watts. Because obviously it's going to be less than that. Our main PoE switch has got a capacity of 150 watts, so there's more than enough power there to juice all of these hardwired access points. So here we've got a little mini PoE switch, which we're going to need to use upstairs because I need to change. We've got a data plate upstairs like that, but it's only got one outlet, so I need to pull that back into the loft, put an RJ45 plug on that, connect it into this switch, put a cable back to the data plate upstairs, and then use this switch to power one of these dishes. As you can see there, PoE budget it's called. This switch has got a maximum capacity of 65 watts worth of power. So essentially we could get maybe four of these, give or take, powered by this. The switch that we're actually using to do the bulk of this power is much larger than this. It's got a much bigger budget. So we've come back to this customer's house because all of a sudden they're having trouble with their download and upload speeds. So the broadband on offer here leaves a lot to be desired. So these guys have actually got a SIM card router in the top corner of their property, and then it comes down, it feeds this Dream Machine, Ubiquiti Dream Machine router. We've then got a Ubiquiti switch, that's your 150 watts capacity budget used for powering PoE devices, and then this is connected up to all the various data points around the house. So speeds aren't great, and the current NICEIC networking solution, home networking solution to provide Wi-Fi around the house doesn't seem to be cutting the mustard. And so, seeing as we've got this excellent Ubiquiti router, we're going to get a few of the hardwired access points, the Ubiquiti hardwired access points involved to replace all the NICEIC stuff. We've then got access, where are we? Here we go. We've then got access to the Unifi OS. So we'll have a look at this in a bit, and this allows us to administer the network, see what devices we've got on there. So at the moment, it doesn't see any of the NICEIC stuff because that's you know, a third-party manufacturer, but we can see any Ubiquiti devices that we've got on the network. So here's our Dream Machine Pro, here's the switch. So as I start to replace the NICEIC stuff with some of the Unifi stuff, we'll start to see these devices become part of the network, and we'll see what sort of things we can do with this OS software. Now I've also got this absolute beast of a receiver to have a try with, to replace the existing SIM card receiver that we've got on the roof. So we're hoping that this huge dish combined with the addition of these Ubiquiti access points should sort out the problems with the slow initial speeds and then the distribution of the network around the property. So I mean, I know it's not the number one consideration, but you can see here that we've got one of these NICEIC mesh points, and we've got the cable from the power supply, and this one is in fact hardwired. So you see you've got the Ethernet cable as well, and it just looks a little bit messy. Obviously this is hidden in the corner of the room, but in an ideal world, you know, you wouldn't see those cables. So one of the benefits of this gear is obviously you don't need the power cable. These ones in particular are going to look really nice. Just mounted directly onto the wall like that, so no cables visible. And these long range discs, you know, you can mount those on the ceiling. I'm going to be mounting these on a, for example, white ceiling down in the garage. So they've got some Wi-Fi in the garage. They're going to be wall mounted behind desks, and again, we're not going to see power cable. It doesn't need a power cable. It's just going to be Ethernet directly into the back. So it'll just be a little bit neater. They do have a blue ring, blue light, and this Flex HD has sort of blue indicator lights at the top, but you can, in the setup, if you're not keen on seeing that, you can turn that light off. As you see, we've got two data points here. Now what I'm going to do is just pop one of these out and actually just leave that connected in the back box. The other one, I'm going to just undo these terminations, put an RJ45 crimp on it so that I can then just go straight into the back of the access point to power it. I'll make sure I've disconnected it at the other end, you know, where it connects into the switch, just so I don't, you know, it's potentially 48 volts coming down that, so I don't want to short that out. You can see here when we did the original data install, we've used shielded Cat 6, I can't remember which category it was, but best we could get at the time. So this protects the integrity of the signal when it's run in proximity to higher voltage circuits. Oh, that's a nice click. Right, so I've just connected up the first access point. So let's just patch that into the switch. Let's see what happens. Cool. Okay, so You see it's powered on. Picked it up. Let's click on add. So it just goes through an automatic firmware update process. So this is the existing part of the house that we haven't done any sort of data install on. So you see this is a slightly skinnier, older category cable. We've got a RJ45 plug there. This is an old phone cable that wasn't being used. So that just tucks in the back box. Get rid of that fly. And that just fits perfectly over the existing back box. We get some screws. We'll have a look at what that little L-shaped piece of metal is for in a moment. There we go. You see that's fit nicely over that back box. Now you can just see where the previous accessory was either side, so you can see that this bracket is maybe only 2 or 3 mil wider. In fact, let's just have a quick look. So that's the accessory, but then it's got a plastic surround as well. Where is it? There you go. It's got like a black trim, and actually you can see that, yeah, so the plate is just fractionally wider. So if your accessories were previously butt up really tight to each other, then maybe this wouldn't fit. But as long as there's a tiny gap, you know, when we're first fixing an installation and we want sockets and switches to be perfectly butt up to each other, we leave roughly a 30mm gap from screw hole in one back box to screw hole in the next back box, and that just ensures that if there's a bit of plastic trim, it accounts for that, and it means we can butt up those switches together. So maybe if you're first fixing with a view to putting these in, you'd maybe look to do 35 or 40mm from eyelet to eyelet, just to leave enough room for this. So RJ45 plugged in. We've got a couple of grooves in the bottom. Okay, sits in a couple of grooves in the bottom. Clicks into place, there we go. Looks nice and solid. And the great thing about these is that there are 4 RJ45 connections in the bottom. So you might have been thinking, well, you know, if you've got a data plate with 2 data points on it, and I've just sacrificed one of those and I've put this in place in lieu of that, we've lost all physical inputs. But actually no, we haven't. We've gained 2 here. Now I'm not entirely sure. I just have to look in the on the data sheet as to whether that then passes on power or not, you know, PoE, or whether that's just a powerless pass through of the data signal. Yeah, this little metal L-shaped bracket goes in there, push it down, and that's how you would remove the device for maintenance. Right, so this fella isn't powering on. So this actually goes back to a bundle of cables up on the first floor behind the office, behind the desk, that these guys use when they're working from home. So I'm going to go to that bundle of cable. I'll plug this in via the one that was labelled up lounge TV point, which is this, but obviously it's been labelled up wrong. So I'm going to disconnect this. Got this nifty cable tester. So you plug this little module onto the one end of the cable, which I'm going to put down here, and then using this cable tester I'm going to go and try all the different cables upstairs in this, and at some point we'll come up with the number 7. It'll tell me how long the cable is, and actually it tells you if all of the cores are in the right terminal on the RJ45 plug. So that's our little number 7 module connected up at this end. Let's go and have a look at the other end. Okay, so we're behind the desk in the home office. So these are the data points that we installed more recently. You can see one of those is connected up to this switch, which is just, you know, putting the printer on the network. There's a couple of other bits there. Anyway, big bundle of cables from around the house come back to this point. We can then patch them back to our main router and switch in the plant room cupboard. So these were all labelled up. Obviously they've been labelled up wrong, so let's see if we could find the right cable. And there we go, you can see I found the right cable there. Number 7, tells me how long it is. Got a tick, which shows me that all of the cords are in the right order, terminated correctly. Right, next problem. That doesn't seem to be a PoE switch, so what I'm going to do is plug it directly into the wall. Make sure I've got the right one. Yep. Okay, so just plug that straight into the wall. Let's go and see if that comes online now. So, it's coming from the lounge downstairs, from that data point, up here on a cable. Plugged it into a switch. Unfortunately, it's not a PoE switch. I mean, we can always swap this out if needs be. But then all we're doing is looping it back down to the data cupboard downstairs. Ace. So now let's pick that up. So let's just add that to the system. There we go, it just has to go through that update process again. So we can click on this just while we're doing this, go settings, and I'm going to call this, no it's not actually, is it? We'll call this lounge. Apply the changes. There we go. Right, now what I'm going to do is just unplug the NICEIC stuff. So that's just unplugged the 2 mesh points on the ground floor now that we've got the Unifi in-wall access points in. Let's just see how that affects my Wi-Fi on my phone straight off the bat. Okay, so we're on the Unifi OS, so we can access this by opening a web browser, going to 192.168.1.1, and then there's default credentials that you use to log in to your Dream machine when you first install it, and then obviously you can customize the username and password thereafter. So once I've logged in, I go to settings, I go to Wi-Fi, and I can punch in the credentials for my new Wi-Fi network, so I'm just going to do that now. Okay, so dead easy. You can see there's my new Wi-Fi network. It's got a name, it's got a password, and I can now log into that from my phone. So I'll just do that now, and then we'll have a look. So I've just logged in on my phone. And you can see here, of the 2 access points that I've installed so far, I'm closest to the ground floor one that we looked at previously. I'm further away from the lounge, so it tells me I'm connected. So we use these Ace Ideal crimps, and you can see they let you pass the coloured cores through the end, so you can just double check that you've got the right order before you then crimp down using a dedicated tool. You see here, as you crimp it down, it just trims the ends off. So you can see these disc style of a back plate that gets mounted, and then these just sit on, rotate and click into place, and they've got a similar sort of release mechanism to the in-wall mounted options, and you just push your little L-shaped piece of metal in and then you can spin it off, otherwise it's locked in place. Okay, so what we've done on the second floor is there's actually a hardwired data point here. I've just taken the cable out, re-terminated into this PoE switch, and then we've got a cable going back out to supply the hardwired data point, and then over there in the loft you can see potentially just flashing away waiting for me to go back down to the router and add this to the system is another one of our long range access points. Okay, so you can see here that the access point that I have just installed in the loft, again it looks like we're a victim of cables incorrectly labelled behind the desk on the first floor. So in the absence of a wired connection, the access point will connect itself to the nearest other access point and just obtain its signal wirelessly, but in this instance that's not what we want because we've got a cable there. It's much better to have a wired connection, and you're going to get a lot more much more solid signal, faster data transfer. So I'm going to get my little cable tester and try and find what's gone wrong there. Okay, so some of the bits that we've got here. Now it comes with this floor stand. You see the pole from the antenna just slots into that. However, we're going to be mounting this on the side of the property, and so we've got this this wall mount bracket, which a couple of meaty fixings in that, and that's going to go on the side of the property. The next thing we've got is this unit which provides power for the dish, the antenna, and this also boots out Wi-Fi if you're using this as a standalone system. However, we've already got, as I mentioned before, a big home network going on, so we need this. So this is the cable that comes with the basic setup, and that connects to this. You can see it's sort of a USB type connection, but it's just a bit bigger than, so it's, you can't get that sort of connection off the shelf. That looks to be about 20 meters. That's going to be plenty for us. The guys actually ordered, just in case, 150 foot cable. We're not going to need that. But yeah, this doesn't just, it's not just an Ethernet cable, it's not power over Ethernet, it's its own dedicated cable. We then need a separate adapter to convert that to Ethernet. So first thing you need to do with this is download the app. You can order the gear from the app, and the first step that the app takes you through is quite a clever little thing where it's, you wave your phone around, it scans the area that you intend to mount the antenna to check for obstructions. Now, because we're mounting this on the side of the building, we've got a clear view of the sky, no obstruction from trees. So let's get all this kit mounted, let's get it fired up. We'll try it as a standalone system first. We'll just use the Wi-Fi of this, we'll check some speeds, and then we'll see if we can get it working with our super duper home network. Okay, so you can see we've got our hole on the side of the property. There's our LTE antenna, which needs to be, you know, really high up so that it's got a good line of sight of the tower over there. So this is the app that I used to find out which operator had the sort of the best coverage on the mast nearest to the customer's house for the LTE antenna. So if we just click on coverage maps, you can then choose your operator. So for example, my phone's on EE, so let's just click on that, and this is actually showing it's Marple for some reason. I'm just going to zoom out. Let's go to where I am in Saddleworth. So yeah, it's pretty good around here. There are sort of dead spots, but by and large EE would be a good choice for here. So that's sort of how I judged, you know, the best coverage. I went through each operator. So let's have a look at O2. Seems to like Marple for some reason. Let's go to me again. So arguably O2's got better coverage, but I'm locked in on a 2-year deal, so I'll be sticking with EE for a while. Yeah, it's pretty handy that. It also, you know, whilst you've got the app running in the background, it can do a real-time survey for you, so you can see all the roads that I've driven on. It gives you a rough estimate of what the signal quality is like. So that's, you know, principally what I've used this app for. There's other bits and pieces in there, but the coverage map is a really useful indicator for when we're installing LTE antennas. However, the Skylink just points straight up to the the Starlink rather, just points straight up to the sky. So I'm going to mount it on the end of that wooden beam, and that's going to give that the dish plenty of room to move around as it does automatically to get the best signal. And so just take the end up of this cable just so you don't get any crud in the connections. So we'll just pull enough of that out. It's a really long cable, we'll just get it up there. The wall bracket comes with some cable clips actually, so we can get that underneath here as we have done with the Ethernet cable, the Cat 6, all the way up to the top of the roof line there. I'm just going to pull enough of this out to get up to the end of here. We'll get the dish mounted, we'll get it turned on, we'll see what happens. So we've got the bracket on the end here. It gets supplied with 2 of these agricultural sized bolts. So you see here, mounting it on the end of this timber means that there's going to be no impedance when the dish moves around to get its best signal. There we go, so that just clicks nicely. There's a little button here that you could press to pull the dish back up again. Just one little tip. This bracket looks as though on the face of it you could feed the cable up through here, when in fact you can't. There's not enough room to get the quite bulky connector through here, so you can see here it does just sit perfectly. There's a little hole there where the cable sits, and I'm just going to ultimately clip this cable, keep it really discreet and along underneath the soffit so that we can't see it. But just for now, while we get it set up, I'm just going to leave that dangling just in case we need to move it at all. And you can see, I think it's pretty much at one extreme, and then it will pivot through to the other extreme. So having it mounted here should mean that there's no obstruction either from the roof. Obviously there's no trees or anything around to obstruct its view of the satellites. So let's plug it in and see what happens. So we've got, you see, a big pile of receiver cable there. Tidy that up shortly. So this is plugged into the bottom of this unit. Just going to power this on. Let's go and see what happens thereafter. And there you go, we can see that it's tilting to try and find the satellite. Oh, how exciting. So we're powered on. I'm just going through the setup process that the app provides you with. Let's see what's next on the agenda. We've gone through the setup process, we've powered everything on. Now we need to join the network that this unit provides. Let's just have a go at that. Okay, so if I open the Wi-Fi settings, now you can see here it's called Woodroyd Starlink, but initially that comes up as an open network called Stinky, funnily enough, without a lock there. You can click directly on that. It then takes you to a page where you can set up the Wi-Fi network. So if we just click on this, and I'm just going to type in the password. So it just asks you to log on with your new credentials. Let's go back to the app now. So we've joined the Wi-Fi, it's booting up. I'm really keen to see what sort of speeds we'll get in here, because as I said, the broadband will be 2 to 5 meg, something like that. The LTE antenna we have been getting between sort of it was maybe 20 to 40 with the Vodafone, then that nosedive, so we've changed it for an O2. We get somewhere between 15 and 40 with O2. It's going to be really interesting to see what we get with this Starlink. Okay, so it's just gone through the process. We've got to where it says finished, it's been set up. Let's just jump back to this network screen, but you can see in the top corner there, now we've got some internet, so let's just do a quick speed test on the phone. Now I should point out, obviously it's overcast today. This is better on clearer days when you've got better weather. Also, it depends on the position of the satellites. Now, this is why we're just leaving the O2 in place, as a backup source, just in case the satellites go down. But yeah, they're it's really good speeds. Happy with that. Now we're not going to be using the built-in Wi-Fi of the Starlink. We're going to be connecting it to the home network, but what is quite cool is this real-time map. You can walk around your property and just see what the Wi-Fi coverage is like. You see it gives you a little meter. So once we've gone through the setup process, this is what the app looks like. We could do a speed test. Let's just click on that. So roughly 60 upload, 60 download, 25 upload. So that's that's really good compared with what we were getting with the LTE antenna. You can see what devices are on the network, so there's just me connected at the moment. You can see uptime, if there's been any power outages. So I actually just turned the power off previously, so you can see there at 12:15ish. That's the downtime there, and then it just takes a little while to boot up again. And then there's a few settings there, like we can change the Wi-Fi login credentials. This is quite cool. You can preheat the device to melt any snow that might be on it. If you are wanting to ship it away, you can return it to its position that lets you get it back in the box, and so on and so forth. Right, next piece of the puzzle is, let's try and get this working. Rather than just as a standalone unit, it will be providing internet to our home network. Right, so this is our Ethernet adapter. This end of the cable will plug into the Wi-Fi / power unit. The receiver will plug into this, and then an Ethernet cable joins into our Unifi Dream Machine. So let's make those connections, and then we can have a look at our Unifi OS, see if we're getting internet. Right, so we've made all the necessary connections. By default, I wasn't immediately getting internet in the house. What we need to do is go to settings, go to advanced, and then bypass Starlink Wi-Fi router. Bypass mode will completely disable the built-in Starlink Wi-Fi router. This is an advanced feature that requires an Ethernet adapter, which we've got, and we own our own network equipment, which we have. So we can just click on save. Okay. Right, so we'll just give that a moment, and then we'll log on to our Unifi Dream Machine and just see if we've got an internet connection. So it just took a little while to pull those settings through. You can see now we're logged on to our Dream Machine, Unifi OS. We can see that internet is provided by Starlink. Let's just do a quick Google speed test. Brilliant. Gonna be really happy with that. So we're getting speeds, you know, the last speed test we did was about 50 meg download and 25 upload. You see we get much faster download speeds, slower upload speeds, but you can see the weather here is really overcast. It's raining a little bit now, so we're happy with those speeds. And there you go, so you can see it's discreetly cable tied. You're not going to see that cabling unless you really look for it under there.